Hello, everyone, and welcome to Franz's Real Estate Facts, episode 17. We are almost legal. We are almost able to vote in the state of California and also anywhere in the United States. And, you know, we talk about property ownership. We talk about just like owning property and what you should do and all of this stuff. But one of the things that I realize is very few people like own property by themselves. A lot of people are like married and they buy houses, or they're single and they buy houses and then they get married. And it's like, well, what does that do really? And so I brought in the wonderful and lovely and amazing Lawyers Club board member, Mikhak, Mikhak Ghorban, who is a family law attorney. Also, I will just say that I'm also a Lawyers Club board member, so we were inaugurated together. So let's promote Lawyers Club. Let's promote each other as members, and let's have Mikhak talk to us about what is community property? Why should we care? What does it matter? Like, does it automatically mean that somebody's going to take a chainsaw and cut the house down the middle and then give it to the two spouses? Or like, are you going to have to build a wall between the house and like add a kitchen to one half, and then it's like, okay, now we both have half the house? Like, what is community property exactly? And so, Mihak, I really appreciate your being here. I love talking to you. I'm incredibly happy that we're going to be on the Lawyers Club board together. And so thank you for being here. And so, community property, why should we care?
Wow. Well, thank you for having me. And congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
And wow, there's a lot to unpack there, Franz. I don't know if we have enough time to, just elaborate on community property, but I'll try to do my best. And probably most of the information will be really general. I can't be too specific for obviously,
Right,
reasons. So that's my little disclaimer that this is all about just general information. But I
right.
highly recommend, if you ever have additional questions, seek out an attorney and go from there.
Yes. This is legal
So
information, not legal advice.
legal,
If you think you have a legal problem, you do, and you need to talk to a lawyer.
I like that. That's even better. Well, wow. I think most individuals, and I have to be general again, think of community property, especially in California, because we're California. California is a community property state. That okay.
Right.
And again, I will have to discuss this in terms of divorce, because when you're together and you're buying the home, you're happy, everyone's fine, you're making your payments, there's not an issue. There's an issue of community property, distribution and your assets when you're no longer happy with one another and you want to part ways, and then your assets need to also part ways. So that's when this becomes an issue. And most people think, okay, well, then that's fine. Everything is divided 50-50. And my legal answer to that is, it depends.
Is
A
it
lot of
a legal
it,
answer to everything, though?
it is, because I think it's great and the law says certain things, but the facts will kind of tailor what you're able to do. And the judge always matters. So it really determines, and when you're able to see the judge, depending on the court schedule. But really, as far as the definition of community property in California, all property acquired during marriage is community property. So that could be real property, land, and personal property, everything else. Separate property, and I don't want to get too into legalese, but separate property is whatever property you acquired before marriage and after legal separation and divorce. So when you're going to be divorcing, you're kind of like cutting off contact. So anything acquired after that, it could also be separate property. And then a lot of people think that, okay, well, I bought certain items during marriage with my separate property funds. We get into the gray area. I always think separate property is tricky because over time, depending on how long you've been married, and in California, 10 years is considered a long-term marriage. where in other states it's 20 years. The fact that in California we can last 10 years, the court feels like that's a good thing. You guys made it to 10 years. So the length of marriage, and also when you commingle your funds. Again, commingling, it just means mixing. Over time, you are having all your bank accounts commingling, mixing the funds, and that kind of grades out, what's belongs to both of you and what just belongs to one of you. So just that as our base moving forward, we had talked about, it asked me maybe like the 5 things that's important to know about what community property ownership. There's a lot, but let's just narrow it down to a couple. First one being separate property, just because you have separate property before coming into marriage. Over time, if you use money during your marriage to, for example, if you have a home, you buy a home prior to being married. And this is not the home that the two of you live in. You purchase another home. That separate property home, if you use the rent on that and continue to put it on that separate property, you can keep that as yours. It's still potentially over time could become a joint ownership. But if you have a separate property home, you both move into it, and then you start using both of your income to pay the mortgage over time, again, could be the potential of becoming community property asset. And I say this in generality because just like we had talked about, Frantz, you can sue for anything. If there's a form in civil, you can sue for anything. In family court, if your ex-spouse or to-be ex-spouse wants, a particular asset, they could request it. Doesn't mean that they're going to get it or the judge is going to agree with all their evidence. But, there has to be enough evidence, meaning tracing that where did that original asset come from? Who used the money? Where did the money come from? How over time it kind of commingled and changed,
Mm-hmm.
So having a separate property, definitely consider having I think, maybe a prenup. Again, that could be another show.
Right.
Not your, to be spouse is going to agree to it, whether they think it's good, bad, but definitely consider speaking to an attorney, a CPA, your financial advisor, potentially how that could impact later on. And the separate property will also come into play, should one of you pass. Again, talk to an estate planning attorney to see how that would come about. I think the main area of where community property becomes an issue is obviously during divorce. And for most couples, at least most of my clients, their biggest asset is their home. There are some that have maybe a larger, pension or 1K or other potential assets, but homes are really the main. And homes tend to be where if you have kids, that's where you brought up kids, that you have a lot of good memories and maybe not so many good memories, depending on where you are. So with a home, you have very few options. And some of the examples you used, and we joked about it, but I think in the past decade, years and years ago, that's probably what people did. So the laws, the courts had to come in and go, no, you can't cut the house in half. No, you cannot, put the line. I'm sure people did. But if you you have a home that you purchased during the marriage and now you're getting a divorce, you have the option of selling it, obviously. That comes with its own pros and cons. If you have one spouse who doesn't want to sell, the other one does. They can't agree on the selling price. Thank goodness for real estate agents who deal with that. The attorneys don't have to deal with that. But there are a lot of issues there. But usually sell it and split the proceeds. And again, you have to consider when you sell the home, are there additional obligations? Do you owe money on the home? Are there community property debts that the both of you have, that those still need to be addressed before you're finally done, separated, all your debt needs to be paid off. And then whether or not one of the spouses use their separate property funds for a down payment, that happens a lot. One, one of the spouses had money, like I can use this money that I've saved up for a down payment. And that has to be in consideration. Do they get reimbursed at the end? What things have happened? Again, connect with an attorney, CPA, financial advisor, all the tax implications that I can't even wrap my head around. So it's important to talk to a professional for that. If you don't want to sell, sometimes because that house is meaningful, maybe one of the spouses want to keep it. I think it's fine if the spouse that's the higher earner wants to keep it because they could probably afford to keep it. It becomes a difficulty when the lower income, the spouse wants to keep it. How are they going to afford to pay for it? They can't just go on that mortgage, your professional area, all the things.
Right, or Karen's professional area for the mortgage.
How are they going to pay for it? Are they going to qualify for that loan? How will that work? And then lastly is, which sometimes occurs, I've had a couple of clients do this, is that both keep the home and they continue living in the home amicably, which always is interesting. If you're amicable where you can remain in the home, why are you getting a divorce? But, it's not my place to say. But they'll choose because of the children, they'll choose to live in the home. I've had clients who kept the main home and also rented a condo. When that parent who had time with the kids during that week came and lived in the home, the other spouse was in the apartment, and then which works fine until one of the parents or ex-spouses starts seeing other people. You can't make that work, but there's some couples who choose to do that for the benefit of their children, sort of like a nesting. So that's an option. But if you cannot make a decision, if you're in that point of I don't want to sell, I want to sell, I want to buy you out, then you will have to go to court, the trier of fact, your judge, to make that decision. And I can't say almost all the time, but if almost all the time, the judge will just rule for you to sell it. It's just easier. And then that's a whole nother story of that.
Right.
As far as, let's see, potentially during the marriage, I think I've had issues where clients will say, we received monetary gifts during marriage. It's, it's from my side of the family. Most of the time that those payments or the monetary gifts were for the benefit of the community, like for the couple. So it doesn't become a separate property. It's for the benefit of the home. So you can't later on go, I need to get that back. It mostly will not happen. Again, distribution. Sometimes what happens outside of divorce, if you own the home together and it's community property, have an estate plan, decide what is supposed to happen. If you choose that, upon your death, all of your community property goes to your other spouse, he or she, you're no longer around later on, he or she can distribute how he or she sees fit. So if you want to make sure that things are in a certain way, then definitely have that established in your estate plan. Again, talk to a professional about that. Just naturally, the state will take care of it in probate. It doesn't work that way. So
no,
it doesn't. What else? Let's see. And right now, I think May 2021. Family court is really backed up, obviously, because of all that's occurred 2020 and due to COVID closing. The earliest hearings are occurring probably end of this year. I mean, we're May, you're looking at closer to end of this year, if not in 2022. So I think couples need to be a little cognizant of the fact that if you're going through this process now, don't expect to be in the front of a judge to hear your, complaints and get someone to make a determination on your case. If you can negotiate, if you can come together and mediate your issues, the better. Of course, emergency cases and domestic violence cases are still being heard. So the court is still
Right.
functioning, but your dispute on, the price of the home or whether or not you're going to get this personal property or not is not considered emergency for the court. I mean,
It's
not that it's
not?
not important, but in weighing what's important, they may not hear it. I know this past several months, the court has been really open to having attorneys with years and years of family law experience come and be sort of like mediators to kind of like speed things up, which has been great. Having them, so you may not get a judge, you will get a mediator who's going to kind of help you, like, seriously, you're not going to get that. So let's just decide on this, or, okay, let's consider this. Maybe consider some options for you to move things along.
Right.
But what else?
Which is good anyway. I mean, figuring out options so that you can move things along is, I think it's necessary now because of COVID, but before it was always a good idea. It saves money and it saves time and really saves a lot of aggravation for people. And I mean, you talked about, I guess, the fancy legal word is transmutation of property into.
I want to say that just goes.
I know, and I'm supposed to be like acting as a real estate agent here, so technically I don't know transmutation, but transmutation of of separate property into community property is really important. And in terms of Lawyers Club, because you know advancing women in the law and society and advancing the status of women, the other than married couples who either have children or don't have children, single women are actually the largest group of people who are purchasing homes now. They are basically buying homes, and they are keeping homes. And when I think of like my single friends who own homes, most of them are actually women, if not all of them are actually women. And so, this idea of transmuting property into community property is actually something that women specifically need to think about if they purchased a home as a single woman. They start dating either a man or a woman, and then they get into this relationship and they get married. That is really something that they need to think about, is like, how do I protect this property, or do I want this property to be transmuted? So these are things that specifically women and men, but really specifically women, just statistically, do need to think about.
Absolutely. And I think one concern being whether or not to have a prenup to try to keep that separate
Hmm.
property yours. But again, it becomes very difficult because part of transmutation, you started that word, so we're going to have to keep using it, is to make sure you can trace it, really track the money. It's not like the mob or anything, but you're tracking where the money came from and who's paying what. So it becomes difficult if you're able to do that. And sometimes you're able to do so the first couple of years of marriage, and over time it's just again, the mixing begins. If you can do that, then you maintain separate property as best as you can. But if you choose not to, again, speak to someone with an attorney, to at least having some sort of a safe word, but having somewhere that
Safe harbor.
started off that this was separate property, and then upon this potentially divorce, in distribution, how is that allocated? That you will get your separate property investment back.
Right.
Yes, go
And
down.
I think that's super, super important. Um, and yeah, so you mentioned a lot of really important facts or really important information. Uh, Obviously, you mentioned the transmutation, and basically, like, if what was what was mine might become ours at some point, is the basic rule. What was mine becomes ours, and that's a problem. And also just kind of understanding how to navigate separate property and real property, and how can you, and not real property, separate property and community property, and how can you maintain that,
Yes.
is very is an issue. And talking to an accountant and a CPA, estate planning attorneys, family law attorneys, getting a prenup, all of these things are really important in maintaining your maintaining the property that you may have invested some money in, and maybe you don't want, maybe you don't want to have to sell it, maybe you don't want to have to, give it to your spouse. You want to be able to protect that investment that you made as a single person,
Absolutely.
um,
And to add
when
to what you
it
said,
ends.
I know a lot of clients are like, well, that's just lot of money, paying all these individuals. You're dealing with an asset, a home, and especially in California, you're looking at a huge investment. So you want to be able to spend a little money making sure that you're protected, the home's protected, and you know, um, the court doesn't always, the court doesn't like to meddle in the couple's decisions as long as it's legal. What they chosen to do,
Right.
doesn't violate a law. When the two individuals decide to maybe have one person buy out or sell it, or we're going to do this with it. I've had clients how in negotiation to see one person's going to, obviously with taxes on the home, the property taxes, who's going to take benefit from this? I'll do that this year, you do it next year. With the kids, the same way, I will claim this year, you claim the other. If they have even kids, even number of kids, two for you, one. So those negotiations are fine. No one's going to come in and deter you from that. And as far as the home goes, if you choose to, one person takes the home and the other person, um, I've had couples discuss, if you sell the home and you keep the proceeds, then you do not come after my, retirement, because it's almost the same amount. So you can have those discussions. And depending on what works best for you in discussion with your attorney, that's fine. And no judge is going to come in and consider,
Right.
sure you don't want the home? Are you sure you don't want to go after, the retirement? As long as both parties made they 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 waived by making sure that they had enough information. They made a I guess a decision based on facts, and they weren't forced to make that decision. The court is going to abide by it most of the time.
Right. Yeah, most of the time. Judges don't want to, and especially judges now in COVID. I don't think, I think if judges are just like, oh, these people agreed to this, great. Let's just move on now. I think
I think
that's how
they're very
many judges
happy.
think.
They're very happy if they just see some paperwork coming their way where they just have to sign it. They review. The judges are still great. They're going to review your documents, your marital settlement agreement, making sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, making sure that everything is, following law. But they're just happy that they don't have to set up a hearing, that the adults made adult decisions.
Exactly. Yes, adults who made the adult decision to get married can make the adult decision to get divorced without having, somebody involved to help them figure out how to
Well,
make that happen.
it is because they want to make sure that you're waiving your rights, knowingly, you're understanding the consequences, and you did so,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and then
Yeah.
they don't have to come to court.
Well, that is exactly, which is great. I think everybody is happy when somebody doesn't have to, when you don't have to go to court. Um, Well, thank you so much for being our or my guest and chatting. I always really enjoy talking to you because you're fun and awesome to talk to, and also extremely knowledgeable. So, the last question that I ask people who are on my show is, if people really thought that if people thought that you were awesome as I thought you were, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm in practice. I practice family and immigration laws at Ghorban Law APC, and uh, office number, I don't know if you're going to post that or I just verbally say, but it's 858-201 4540. And contact me via email as well, because I think we're still a little bit, my office manager is still a little scared about individuals coming into the office, but email is always best, mg@ghorbanlaw.com. So, okay. Or they can always connect with you, as you and I
Awesome.
are in constant communication.
Yes, I know that is very true. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. And next week, I am sure that I will either not have an awesome guest and say talk about something interesting, or I will have an awesome guest and I will also talk about something and we'll also talk about something interesting. So thank you, Mihak, for being our guest. Thank you so much, especially for taking the time out of your busy day. Congratulations on becoming a Lawyers Club board member. I think it is a wonderful organization, and I think you will do a very nice job
Great as well.
moving us forward
Thank you for being one of our
and celebrating. Yeah, you're welcome. And also celebrating the 50th anniversary of Lawyers Club. I think that'll be really awesome.
Very nice. Thank you so
So it'll
much.
be really exciting. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Bye.